does feel like it's indeed been a minute since I have talked about Kagurabachi on this channel. I've been busy working on a Jujutsu Kaisen video, which, by the way, please go check that out after this one. But originally, once chapter 113 hit, starting the Seitei War arc, I was going to make a video detailing a couple of points that I wanted to see explored within this arc. Stuff that I wanted, like wish list, essentially, of what I would like to see Hokuzono go through within this arc. However, as if Hokuzono was listening to my very wants and needs, like an eldritch deity whispering sweet nothings into my ear holes. Chapter 114 arrives, and at least 3 of the very things that I was going to talk about in that now scrapped video have come into fruition and have been acknowledged, touched upon, or at least I think they have. So let's just talk about it.
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
Kunishige's character is a character that we have seen extremely limited amounts of information on throughout the series, and we know, obviously, he is Chihiro's dad, he's a bit of a goofball, and he's basically Oppenheimer within this world. Now, Hokuzono does something very, very interesting within this chapter, because he flips the script on our whole sort of perception of Kunishige. Well, he did that for me anyway. I don't know about you guys, but till this point, I think we've always known him to be this apparently uber famous swordsmith known to be creating enchanted blades, and one that won us the war essentially, which is wonderful, right? Well, it turns out Kunishige wasn't exactly living this polished, lavish lifestyle that we were led to believe before finding his fame and fortune with the enchanted blades, because in fact Kunishige was unknown to the broader public in general. It was actually Shiba who had a hand in bringing Kunishige into the limelight by introducing him into the Daten Sekai that had obviously been excavated from the islands close to Shikoku. Now, when we arrive at Kunishige's house, we are met with squalor, a general lack of safety and self-preservation, and it's a far cry removed from the secured, secretive recluse that we meet early on in the chapters with Chihiro. Now, the fridge is empty, the doors are unlocked, and he is laying on the floor having passed out from hunger. It is not the first impressions that I was genuinely expecting from Kunishige here. The whiplash that Hokuzono has gave me with this chapter was very unreal, because thinking back on it, the decision to make Chihiro almost identical to his father, I think is a very good choice. It's a very obvious choice for me personally. It's likely that part 2 of the series is probably going to continue on now for some time, I would imagine. There's a lot to cover of the past history of Kagurabachi here. Maybe 50 chapters, maybe 100 chapters. Who fucking knows? Could be 25 of just heavy lore drops. Who knows? But Hokuzono choosing to have Kunishige resemble Chihiro and vice versa, I think is a smart choice, because it keeps us, the reader, still somewhat invested with a familiar face that's almost like we're watching the main character as normal. Instead, we are now being introduced to an entirely new character that we've obviously had referenced for the first of his over 100 chapters of the series. There's a goofball, chaotic energy about Kunishige almost instantly. He's screwing up to Shiba, demanding he hands over the food that he can smell on him, slobbering at the idea that Shiba might get him food, and all that energy almost instantly changes once being handed a mineral that he's never seen before. There's a complete and utter tonal shift in Kunishige as he hones in on the Daten Sekai here, smashing it against the floor, staring intently at it, and even noticing details instantly that took scientists God knows how long and a shit ton of technology in order to figure out. Now, I'm sure by now you've all watched many a film series or just read a book or something in which our heroes are lost and they need the help of an enthusiastic or eccentric genius who specializes in that one particular peculiar field that the heroes are in need of with. And I think that is exactly what is happening right here. It's no secret that Hokuzono is a film buff. The shots he has conjured and the dynamic choreography within this series are all direct results of maybe countless hours of watching films to gather that kind of reference and framework to build the kind of action sequences that he does. In some ways, he does remind me a lot of Hideo Kojima, who just seems to be very well versed in movie tropes, knowledges, and fighting choreography, I guess. Now, I need to talk about the next part of this chapter that has definitely caught my attention. Chihiro's lineage is a topic that has been on my brain, and I mentioned at the start of the video that I have a few things in mind that I would like to see within this arc. Now, one of those things is Chihiro's mother, because in an interview a while ago, Hokuzono mentioned that Chihiro's mother will be relevant within the story down the line. We've never, so far, not seen anything of her. Like, didn't even have a name. We don't know a status of whether she's alive or dead. We don't know anything about Chihiro's mother other than at some point she definitely existed, probably, hopefully, maybe. Now, that's what brings me around to this name right now. Princess Chiaki Soga. Akimura Soga is obviously the main driving antagonist of the series right now. We know this by his own words. He's the brother-in-law of Kunishige, making him Chihiro's uncle. Now, right now, Chihiro hasn't been born, and there's this undertone of a connection between Kunishige and Chiaki already being set up. Upon hearing the name, Kunishige replies with, Chiaki, she's got it rough too, and Shiba presses him further in later dialogue, trying to convince him to come to Tokyo, asking him, don't you want to see Chiaki, don't you? Like, why are we not doing this? Now, Kunishige's nonchalance isn't quite as nonchalant as he would like it to be. In my personal opinion, he does seem to sort of shrug it off with a bit of boisterous energy, like, whatever. To add into all of this, I think it's very reasonable to say that this could be Chihiro's mother. I feel like it's a very noteworthy name to have dropped randomly, and it's not above Hokusonu's board to just casually name drop a major character within the series here, because for him dropping vital information casually into dialogue, it keeps us, the reader, constantly wondering who or what he's referencing to, until later, the more ceremonious introduction of the character that he is referenced to is then seen to us. Now, excluding the idea that this is Chihiro's mother we are talking about here, there is more I would like to touch upon, because in chapter 72 it's mentioned how a royal family on Shikoku was deposed and chose to surrender. Now, in this current chapter, Shiba mentions how he has gotten a hold of the Datanseki via Princess Soga's prophecy, which begs the question, is this a legitimate prophecy, or is this information from Princess Soga due to her being a possible resident of the island? I don't know. I'm very intrigued to see here, because there is definitely throughout the series a lot of misinformation that is talked about in regards to Shikoku, the war, and everything that was going on here. So I'm very, very interested to see how Hokusono is sort of going to navigate this. Now, again, this theory of her being from the island, it obviously has a flaw. For example, if Princess Soga was from the island, then so too is Akimura Soga, which really wouldn't make sense as to how he became such a die-hard fundamental Japanese nationalist defender, I suppose. Like, this dude is ready to drop nuclear warfare on anyone who he thinks might be a threat within Japan. So I'd like to hear your thoughts down below here. There's definitely a lot of stuff that we're missing when it comes to these two characters. What I will say, though, is that twice now the idea of a prophecy has been floated around within this series, and twice now it's been in reference to a member of the Soga family. Once when Yora talked to Samura about the malediction happening again in Japan, a prophecy that did indeed come to pass, which obviously is in reference to Akimura now activating the malediction in the recent chapters, and now in this chapter in regards to Princess Soga having her own prophecy, which, again, if I had, £1 for every time that this happened, I'd only have £2, but it's weird that it happened twice, I suppose. Now, this does get me thinking into the next topic that I wanted to talk about here, which is Soga's potential royalty. The revelation that Chiaki is royalty made me realize something about Akimura. Being of royalty could be the reason why he's so convicted within his belief that led him to keeping the island of Japan pure, I guess, from Shikoku threats or any sort of evildoer, I guess. Now, if he's royalty, I suppose it would be his job to protect the peoples of that land that he is ruling over. That's what royalty is supposed to do. They're supposed to lead, they're supposed to protect. That's their role, I suppose. However, in many such cases, that can always go very skew-if, just a wee bit. Case in point with Akimura Soga, in a twisted way, you can say he believes he is protecting Japan from evildoers with his actions here, but obviously it is very, very twisted and dark. Akimura's possible royalty here might also be an additional factor as to why he was given this cover story for his actions over in Shikoku. I mean, this dude literally committed a genocide here. Why he was allowed to remain a hero in the public eye without the people knowing the truth could be a result of him being royalty. Much like in the real world, royal families will go to extreme lengths to cover up wrongdoings. We've seen plenty of that recently in the Times and news and whatever. This all brings me to my final point in the video, though. Subaru Urita. Now, I mentioned earlier how Hokusonu loves to drop major names for characters quietly under dialogue as if we won't notice, but Subaru is one of those names that got mentioned God knows when. Brownie points to you if you can figure out what chapter it was. It was a long time ago, I remember that much though. However, despite him now being introduced to us formally as the world-class swordsmith that he is, his main profession is indeed sushi chef, which is his main job. It's stated within this chapter. The title he's been given at the end of this chapter is actually sushi chef, which, again, I'm very much interested in Subaru's character. We don't know a whole bunch about him. I've seen a lot of theorizing going on within the community that he's the actual eccentric teacher who might have taught Kunishige. Now, for some reason, when I saw this dude's full face here, I couldn't for some reason place why, but he gives me the same energy as Fletcher from Whiplash. If you've seen Whiplash, you might get what I'm talking about here. If you've not seen the film, I highly recommend it. But if he is indeed Kunishige's teacher, and he does fit what I've just said about him matching that personality of Fletcher, it would explain why Kunishige is coming to have objects embedded in his skull for getting things wrong. So yeah, I guess we'll see. But either way, Hokuzono, I think, is off to a very intriguing, interesting start with part 2. I'm very much enjoying that slower pace of revelations that's going on here. It's nice to see the story sort of take a back seat. As I mentioned a couple of videos ago, he knows what he's done now. We're over 100 chapters. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We're very, very much invested. He's teased and poked and prodded us constantly with the Seitei War and Shikaku. There is a lot of mystery that a lot of us want to know about, so now I'm glad to see that he's going to take a sort of step back on the pacing of the story and really reel us back in with all the lore drops here. But let me know what you think of the chapter and the video in the comments below, and as always, be sure to like and subscribe. Go check out the latest Jujutsu Kaisen video, and as always, support me on Patreon, follow me on Instagram, and I'll catch you guys all next one. Much fucking love, big fucking kisses.